It was just another quiet Monday in suburban Ohio, when everything in my life turned upside down. And no, it didn't happen with some grand announcement or cinematic score in the background, just a knock at the door, firm and unforgiving. I was home from my shift at the auto repair shop, lounging on the couch in worn out jeans and socks with holes, flipping through a sports magazine when the knock came. Two officers stood on our porch, one tall and stiff, the other thick-set, with a look that said he hadn't smiled since '95. Ryan Matthews, the tall one asked. My name caught in my throat. Yeah, I said, standing up, heart suddenly racing. We received an anonymous tip regarding controlled substances at this address. We'd like to take a look inside. I blinked at them. The street behind them looked perfectly normal. Our neighbor's dog still barked at squirrels. The same broken street light buzzed just above. Everything looked ordinary, but my gut twisted like a storm was about to hit. I let them in without a second thought. I wasn't hiding anything, right? I figured they were confused. Maybe Jessie, my older sister, had done something dumb again. But when I saw my mom waiting in the living room, cup of tea in hand, legs crossed like she was expecting them, my stomach dropped. My dad was standing off to the side, rigid, his eyes not meeting mine. Then my mom looked at the officers and said, Ryan's room is upstairs, first door on the right. My jaw nearly unhinged. Wait, what? Why are you? What's going on? The officers were already moving, determined, like they'd rehearsed. I followed them up, heart pounding, past Jessie, who stood leaning on the railing with her phone in hand, hoodie pulled over her head, face unreadable. She didn't say a word. My dog Buster, an old mutt who usually barked at strangers, just wagged his tail once, uncertain. They opened my bottom dresser drawer, like they'd done it 100 times, and pulled out a Ziploc bag full of pills. I laughed, actually laughed, a short, confused, helpless chuckle. That's not mine, I said immediately, raising my hands instinctively. They didn't react. They'd heard it before. I turned, ready to confront the only people in the house who should have had my back. Mom, Dad, that's not mine. One of the officers looked at them. You mentioned earlier you'd seen your son with this bag. My mom gave a slow nod. Yes, she said softly. We didn't know what it was, but he's been distant, stressed. We thought it might be related. My dad added, he's been spending a lot of time alone. Mood swings. It's been hard to reach him. I stared at them, stunned. They sounded rehearsed, detached. You can't be serious, I said, voice rising. Jessie put that there. She did. My mom stepped forward, her voice low and sharp. Don't make this harder than it already is. They cuffed me in the hallway while Buster whined at their feet. I couldn't believe it. My own family. My sister watched from the top of the stairs, her expression as blank as ever. I didn't cry. I was too shocked. The cuffs bit into my wrists as they walked me out. My parents, not saying a word, just watching. They looked relieved, like they'd finally cleaned up a mess they didn't want to deal with. I sat in the back of the cruiser, watching our house get smaller in the rearview mirror, trying to understand how everything had flipped. I wasn't the golden child. That was Jessie, 3 years older, the perfect one. Honor student, cheerleader, favorite of every neighbor and teacher. When she got a B, they called the school. When I got an A, they barely noticed. When she wanted a dog, they bought Buster. When she got bored of him, I was the one who fed him, walked him, trained him. He became mine in every way that mattered. And now they were throwing me away like I was nothing. The station was cold and gray. They put me in a holding room with a bench. No answers, just silence. I thought of Buster, probably waiting by the door. I thought of Grandpa Pete, my dad's father, the only adult who ever treated me like more than an afterthought. His house was a 10-minute walk away, a place I escaped to when things got tense. He never pried. He just made grilled cheese and listened. I wondered if he knew what was happening. I hope not. I stared at my hands, red lines from the cuffs, still etched in my skin. They hadn't even asked if I wanted a lawyer. They didn't have to. My parents had already arranged one, a woman named Claire, with 2 large glasses and a legal pad instead of a laptop. She introduced herself flatly, barely looking up from my file. "Your parents are concerned," she said. "They want to get this resolved quietly." I laughed again. Bitter this time. "They set me up," I said. "My sister planted those pills. They're covering for her." Claire didn't flinch. "Do you have any proof?" I opened my mouth, closed it. Then I remembered the nanny cam. I'd set it up to keep an eye on Buster when I was at work. Hidden inside an old trophy on my shelf. Motion activated. Micro SD storage. It might have caught her. My heart raced. I made my one phone call, not to my parents, to Lucas, my best friend. "Go to my room." I told him, "Find the baseball trophy next to my bed. There's a camera inside. Grab it. And take Buster, too. Don't tell anyone. Just go." He didn't ask questions, just said, "On it." That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of the cell, wondering if the footage still existed, wondering if Jesse had found it first, wondering if anyone would ever believe me. I wasn't sure, but I had to try. They called me back into the interview room the next morning. Claire was already there, straight-backed in a folding chair, hair in a messy bun, like she hadn't slept either. She didn't say good morning or ask how I was doing. She just said, "We got it?" My breath caught. "Got what?" She opened her manila folder and held up a small, black SD card inside a plastic evidence bag. "Your friend Lucas followed your instructions. The footage is clear. Jesse entered your room, opened the dresser, and planted the bag. There's a timestamp. The day before your arrest." I leaned back slowly, the cold metal chair creaking under my weight. "And my parents?" I asked. "Did they know?" Claire hesitated. Hard to prove intent yet, but their statements contradict what the video shows. "We'll be presenting it." During the pretrial conference, I couldn't tell if I wanted to laugh or cry. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had a match to strike in the dark. "So what happens now?" I asked. Claire closed her folder. "Now we play their game. With better cards." The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and regret. I sat beside Claire at the long beige table in a windowless room, facing my parents and Jesse across from us. My mom wore her pressed navy blouse, the one she always saved for PTA meetings. My dad looked tired, bags under his eyes, hands folded so tightly his knuckles were white. Jessie slouched in her hoodie, arms crossed like a kid, forced to go to Sunday school. No one made eye contact. Claire slid the laptop across the table, clicked play. Silence filled the room as the footage played out. Jessie stepping into my room, pulling the ziplock from her hoodie, sliding it neatly into the dresser. Calm, deliberate, not a flicker of hesitation. When it ended, I waited. I expected shouting, excuses, denials, but it was quieter than I imagined. My mom's lips parted, but no words came. Her face went pale. My dad stared at the laptop like it had betrayed him personally. Jessie said nothing. Claire leaned forward. Would anyone like to amend their prior statements? Jessie cracked first. "I didn't think it'd go that far," she mumbled. "It was just supposed to scare him. He was getting too close to things." My mom turned to her sharply. "What things?" Jessie shrugged. "The trust. Grandpa Pete told me he was leaving it all to Ryan. Dad said it was a mistake. He said we needed to make sure Ryan stayed out of trouble, or the lawyers would rethink everything." I blinked, stunned. Claire remained expressionless. "So, you planted drugs on your brother to sabotage his inheritance." Jessie flinched, but didn't deny it. My dad finally spoke. We were trying to protect the family. We didn't want this public. I couldn't stop myself. By framing me, by letting me rot in a cell while you sipped tea and pretended you didn't know anything. My mom's voice trembled. We didn't think you'd get arrested. We thought you'd take the fall quietly, maybe probation, then we'd fix it. Claire closed the laptop. That's obstruction of justice, perjury, conspiracy, not parenting. She stood up. We'll be filing for dismissal immediately and providing this footage to the prosecution. The silence in the room thickened. No one followed us out. Claire didn't speak again until we reached the elevator. They underestimated you, she said. They thought you'd break. I nodded slowly. They thought wrong. I returned to Grandpa Pete's place that evening. He was waiting on the porch, Buster curled up at his feet. He's barely eaten, Grandpa said, but he's been guarding your room like a soldier. I dropped my bag and knelt beside Buster, running my fingers through his wiry fur. He whined softly and licked my hand. I got you, buddy, I whispered. We're okay now. Grandpa handed me a glass of iced tea. You know, he said slowly. I told your parents about the trust 2 weeks ago. Figured it was time. I looked up, confused. You mean before I got arrested? He nodded. Next thing I know, they're calling me, talking about your criminal behavior, suggesting I revise the paperwork. I didn't argue. I just made the trust irrevocable. He walked into the kitchen and returned with a folder. It's yours now. They can't touch it. I opened it, hands shaking slightly. Legal documents, all stamped and signed. It was real. Claire had won the legal fight. Grandpa had secured my future. I wasn't just free. I was protected. I sat there on the porch with Grandpa and Buster, watching the sun dip below the trees, wondering how people could be so cold to their own blood, but also how others, like Lucas, like Claire, like Grandpa, could show up exactly when you need them most. My family had tried to erase me, but I was still here, and I was just getting started. 2 weeks passed before the official charges were dismissed. Claire called me on a Thursday morning while I was out walking. Buster near the trail by Roosevelt Park. She didn't even wait for me to say hello. It's over, she said, voice steady. You're in the clear, officially. The words hit me like a cold wind. I sat on a bench and just stared across the duck pond for a full minute. So that's it. I finally asked. It doesn't erase what they did, she said, but you're no longer under investigation. Jesse has a plea hearing scheduled, and your parents, well, the DA's not playing nice. I couldn't stop the small, bitter smile. Good. That weekend, I went back to the courthouse, not as a defendant, but to observe Jessie's hearing. She was pale, jittery, wearing a blazer she probably borrowed from Mom. The courtroom was almost empty, save for Claire, a few reporters, and Grandpa, who sat stiff beside me. Jessie pled guilty to possession with intent to distribute and false reporting. Her attorney tried for leniency, citing family pressure, emotional distress, but the judge wasn't buying it. She got 3 years in state prison, eligible for parole in 2. My stomach twisted, not from guilt, but from the fact that she still wouldn't look at me. After the gavel dropped, she was cuffed and led away. My parents didn't show. I didn't know if it was cowardice or shame, but I didn't care. They'd have their own court date in a month. Obstruction, conspiracy, perjury, county jail time was all but certain. I thought I'd feel vindicated watching them fall apart, but mostly, I just felt empty. The next morning, I found a letter taped to the front door of Grandpa's house. It had no return address. I recognized the handwriting instantly. My mother's. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in looping cursive. We thought we were protecting the family. It read, we thought if we handled it quietly, no one would suffer. We didn't realize how much we were hurting you until it was too late. There was no apology, no mention of what they did, just vague remorse cloaked in self-pity. I read it once, folded it, and stuffed it in the junk drawer, under expired coupons and old batteries. That's where it belonged. Grandpa didn't ask about the letter, didn't say anything. Instead, he handed me a flyer he picked up at the community center. Evening courses. Criminal justice, he said. Might be something there? I looked at him. You think I should go into law? He shrugged. Seems like you've already started. I enrolled that week, 2 nights a week, part-time. The campus was small, just a few blocks from the train tracks. The first day of class, I wore the same sneakers I'd been arrested in, but this time with new laces. Clean slate. I didn't tell anyone my story. I just listened, studied, took notes on how the system worked and how it failed. Claire emailed me once, asking if I'd be open to speaking to a nonprofit about wrongful arrests. I said yes. She connected me with someone named Marissa, who ran a youth advocacy group downtown. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of 12 teenagers who'd all seen more than they should have at their age. And I told them what happened to me. I didn't give them a lecture. I gave them a thread. The same thread I once grabbed when everything else fell apart. They listened. A few nodded. One kid asked, "What saved you?" I thought about it, then said, "A teddy bear with a camera and someone who believed me when no one else did." Afterward, Marissa pulled me aside. "You've got something," she said. "You ever think about doing this full time?" I laughed. "It's not exactly what I planned. The best things never are," she replied. I started volunteering twice a week, then 3. By spring, I was running workshops on digital privacy and how to document evidence safely. I was turning the worst year of my life into something that made sense, something that mattered. Grandpa bought me a used Honda Civic so I could get to campus and the nonprofit without borrowing rides. It had 128. Miles and smelled faintly like onions. But it was freedom. Buster rode shotgun, tongue out the window, like he finally understood what peace felt like. One night in late March, I got home to find Grandpa on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee and a tired look in his eyes. "Got a call today," he said. "Your mom wants to visit." I froze. "Here?" He nodded, said she wants to apologize in person. I looked down at Buster. He tilted his head like he was waiting for my answer. 2. "What do you think?" I asked Grandpa. He sipped his coffee. "I think forgiveness and permission aren't the same thing. You don't owe her your porch." I nodded. "Quiet. Then I'll write her back. Tell her I'm not ready." Grandpa didn't smile or frown. He just handed me a pen. We sat in silence after that. And for once, it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. I wasn't angry anymore. Not the way I used to be. But I wasn't giving anyone the power to write me out of my own life again. That part was over. I was Ryan Matthews. I was 24. I lived in a yellow house with creaky stairs, an aging mutt who loved me unconditionally, and a future no one could sabotage again. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I didn't expect the sentencing to bring closure. That's not how it works. You don't walk out of a courtroom and magically feel whole again. But when Jessie stood there in her jumpsuit and read her apology to the judge, something in me shifted. She didn't look at me once, but she said my name clearly, said what she did, admitted why. "I was angry," she said. "I thought Ryan had taken something from me. I wanted to hurt him the way I felt hurt. I didn't think it would go this far." It was the closest she'd come to honesty in years. The judge gave her 3 years, with parole review after 2. She cried. I didn't. My parents came next. They took plea deals, pled guilty to obstruction and perjury. The judge wasn't lenient. You used your authority as parents to protect one child by sacrificing the other. This was not ignorance. It was calculated. 18 months in county jail. 2 years supervised release. They looked like statues in the courtroom. Gray. Still. Lifeless. I walked out without speaking to them. That night, I sat on the porch with Grandpa. Buster lay at my feet, snoring softly. "So," Grandpa said. "Now what?" I shrugged. "I don't know. I still want to finish school, maybe work in advocacy, maybe just live without constantly looking over my shoulder." He handed me a letter. "This came for you today." It was from the trust attorney. The trust he'd set up was now fully activated. The house, a modest inheritance, and a small fund to help me start something of my own, all protected from the family that tried to bury me. I opened the envelope and felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy. Exactly. Not relief. Something steadier. Something like peace. A few weeks later, I got an email from a university downstate. They'd seen my story in a regional paper, heard about my speaking at the nonprofit. They wanted to interview me for a scholarship, possibly a fellowship. I took the train down, wearing a suit I borrowed from Grandpa's closet and shoes I bought at a secondhand store. When I sat across from the admissions officer, I told him the whole story. Not the dramatized version, not the polished one, just the truth. At the end, he said, "You know, some people break under this kind of pressure." I nodded. "I almost did, but you didn't," he said, and he offered me a full ride. That night, I emailed Marissa and told her I'd be moving downstate for school. She was thrilled, asked if I'd consider starting a chapter of the nonprofit in the city. I said yes. 2 months later, I was living in a tiny apartment with Buster, who took to city life like he'd been waiting for it. He barked at buses, chased pigeons, and slept on a twin bed like he owned it. I started classes, hosted workshops on wrongful accusations, and mentored kids who reminded me of me. One evening, I got a letter from Jessie. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. I opened it. It wasn't long. She said she understood if I never forgave her. Said she wasn't asking for that. She just wanted me to know she knew now what she'd done, that she was getting help, that she missed Benny, that she hoped one day I'd be okay. I folded it, put it in a drawer, and didn't answer. I wasn't angry. I just wasn't ready. I might never be. Forgiveness isn't a finish line. Sometimes it's a decision you have to make over and over. My parents haven't contacted me. Grandpa said they asked about me once. He told them I was doing fine and left it at that. I heard through Claire they'd lost a lot. Friends, reputation, standing in the community. The neighbors who used to bring them pies now crossed the street to avoid them. They'd always cared more about perception than people. Now they had neither. One Saturday morning, I gave a speech at a youth conference. I stood in front of a crowd of 200 kids, all of them carrying their own stories, and told them mine. I told them about the teddy bear camera, about the hallway arrest, about the silence that followed. I told them how sometimes survival isn't about fighting. It's about remembering who you are when no one else does. When I finished, one of the teens asked, "Would you ever go back?" I thought about it, about the house, the birthdays I spent invisible, the nights I fell asleep, wondering what I'd done wrong. "No," I said. "I don't need to go back to prove I moved on." Afterward, I walked outside with Buster. The sun was warm. A breeze carried the sound of kids laughing nearby. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't the mistake. I wasn't the shame. I wasn't the background character anymore. I was Ryan Matthews, and I wasn't going anywhere.